Hi everyone and welcome to this afternoon's webinar. Today we're going to be looking at Google Docs and how to provide feedback and also just to take a bit more of a general look at Google Docs and how you might collaborate and how you might comment and maybe use them for meeting minutes and things like that. Just to kind of get started and just for a little bit of fun, we obviously asked a question in the chat about what goes first on a scone or a scone, depending on how you say it. We had some good responses. I mean, obviously, as the host of the webinar, whatever I say is right. So definitely jam first. Only joking. But yeah, we had some good debate going on. So I'm really pleased to see people getting so enthused about scones. And obviously, lots of people are probably going to be adding that to their shopping list the next time they get out to the supermarket. So with that, I think we will get started with the webinar today and stop talking about food because we're after lunchtime now and we all should be quite full from a nice lunch. So we have some great speakers today. First and foremost, we have Laura and Darren, who are Google certified trainers, and they're from EdTech team, and they are here to actually give you a hands-on demo of how to use Google Docs in the various ways that we've talked about. And just to introduce myself, my name's Kiri, and I am the National Accounts Manager in the Google for Education team. We're also really lucky today to be joined by two different schools/colleges. So we have Scott and Kim joining us from Bridgend College, and we also have Ed Turner from Thirstable School Sports College and Sixth Form Centre. And they're going to be sharing their stories of how they're using G Suite for education, for distance learning, and also talk a little bit around how they use Google Docs. So it's my job to talk to you about what resources are available when it comes to Google for Education. So let's get started. So for those of you that are brand new to G Suite, you may not know already, so I'll kind of start simply, is that basically G Suite for Education is a set of productivity tools that allow you to collaborate live in real time, and they're all cloud-based. And so hopefully today, once we go through the hands-on demo, if you're not quite sure what cloud means or what cloud-based tools mean, then we'll hopefully establish that by looking at live collaboration, as I said, and also where things are stored, for example. So you have access to things like Google Docs and Google Forms, Google Classroom, Jamboard, Meet, all these great tools. And if you are interested on how to use any of the rest of them, other than Google Docs, then we do have a ton of webinars that were recorded and that we've been running over the past few weeks that you can go back and have a watch of. And we also have a teacher centre, which I'll talk to a little bit in a second. And basically, the reason that they're so popular and the reason we see so many schools using G Suite is because they're easy to use. The feedback we get is that it's very intuitive, it's flexible and scalable, built for collaboration, and they're secure by design. And G Suite for Education is GDPR compliant. So in terms of resources to get you started, so if you are brand new to G Suite, then we have something called Teach from Home, which is a temporary hub we've created specifically for the current climate that we're in right now. And basically, you will have access to a ton of trainings that you can click on and basically get kind of up to scratch with how to use it instantly. So there's things on there which you can see just on the picture here, how to live stream your lesson using Google Meet, or how you do live Q&As within your Google slide deck. And so these are kind of quick snippets on how you can use the tools for distance learning. So if you're looking to really just to get started, then this is definitely the place to do that. We've also updated this recently, so we've included not just tips on G Suite, but also things like the Internet Legends, which is all about keeping primary school children safe online, and things like CS First. So definitely go and take a look at it. It's got a whole heap of basically everything that Google has to offer for education. We've also been releasing lots of new features to our tools based on the demand that we're seeing from educators across the world. We're getting lots and lots of feedback for the tools and how we might be using them for distance learning right now. So the first one to highlight is that we have these blog articles which kind of introduce all of the new features that are available. So you can go to g.co/edu/COVID-19 and find out all the latest stuff that's going on and what's coming out, and you can find that there. We also have created specific distance learning training on G Suite, which is on our Teacher Centre, and you can find that at g.co/Teacher Centre. Mind the US spelling, it is ER, not RE. And as you'll know already, because you're here today, we do have a UK webinar series, and that's at bit.ly/GFE UK webinars. As I said, we have lots of pre-recorded webinars that you can go and find and re-watch back, and also all of the upcoming ones are on the upcoming page, so you can go and find links to them and what we have coming up this week and next. And finally, from me, as I talked about the Teacher Centre and our distance learning curriculum on there, we also have basically relaunched the Teacher Centre. So if you head over to the Teacher Centre now, the old page where you would have gone before will actually say that we've got a new page. Would you like to go to it? You can click through to it, or you can simply go to g.co/Teacher Centre, and this will take you to the new Teacher Centre page. So we've given it a bit of a refresh, a bit of a revamp, and in addition to that, we've released some new product guides. So these are specifically about each of the G Suite tools that we're covering in these webinars, but that are available to you in G Suite for Education. So what's really great about this is these are kind of self-guided, self-paced guides on how you can use the tools. And if there's any specific questions about Google Docs, we'll pop that in the link today, so you can go back and look after today's webinar. So with that, I'm going to pass over to Laura, who I know is waiting in the wings, to come and demo Google Docs. Hi, Laura. Did you want to introduce yourself to everyone, and then you can get started?
Sure. Thanks very much, Kiri. Thanks for such a nice introduction. Hi, everyone. My name's Laura. I'm a full-time secondary school teacher, Director of Digital Learning. I'm also a Google Certified Innovator and Trainer, and I'm currently researching the use of digital tools for learning. So I'm doing an EdD, so like a PhD, while you're working. So I use this stuff a lot, and it's very central to my teaching practice. And I'm really happy to be with you today to share some of the ways that I use Google Docs in particular. I'm going to start today on the basis that you've maybe not seen Google Docs before or not seen it a lot before, and I'm going to talk about Google Docs by itself. And then I'm going to hand over to my great mate Darren, who's going to show you how to use it within Google Classroom and how those tools all fit together. So I'm going to start from the beginning. I'm going to put a timer on myself because I love this stuff so much. I'm a bit prone to talk for too long. So I'll get cracking. So first of all, what is Google Docs? Where do you find it? How do you get into it and everything else? If you have a Gmail account of your own, or if your school has signed up to G Suite for Education, you've got a variety of ways to access the content. So probably the simplest way is if you just go to a normal Google web page, once you're signed in, and you can find this tool in the corner. I call it the waffle icon. I think it's probably got a proper name, but to me it looks like a waffle, so that's what I call it. And from here, you've got access to shortcuts to all of the Google tools. And you can customize this icons. If you know you use Docs more than anything else, you can shove it up at the top and get it so it's easily to hand. So you can get to Docs straight away by clicking on this button, and it takes you into a home page for Google Docs. So that's one way to go into it. The thing to think about Docs is it's a web-based tool, it's a cloud-based tool. So you can access your documents and your information anywhere where you have access to the internet. And you can even earmark these files for offline use. So let's say you're going on a long flight and you want to work on something, you can mark it for offline use, download its current version, hop on the plane, work on it on your way somewhere. When you get where you're going, connect to Wi-Fi and it will resynchronize. So they're web-based, but they're really, really flexible. The other significant advantage of these is that you can access them on almost any device. So I'm working today on a laptop, but I work in an iPad school and all of my students use Google Docs in the iPad app. It's also very flexible on Chromebooks. Some of my students even like working on their phones. I'm old, so I like a big screen, but they don't seem to mind. So Google Docs on the web looks like this. And what you can see is an area at the top here of a template gallery, where I've got a bunch of sort of ready-made templates, which are really useful. I can also have educational, organizational-based templates. So if there are templates we use as a school, we could put these in here and use those quite easily. So I can get to it from the waffle icon. I can get to it also just by going to docs.google.com on anything which has a web browser. And it'll bring me to exactly the same page. So finding your content is pretty straightforward. Android app, iPad apps, all the same. And the beautiful thing about it is the interface is really similar wherever you are with it. So it doesn't have lots of different versions to learn. Super, super simple. I can literally just start, and here I am in my document. I can give it a title. And off I go. And I'm a terrible typist, so I'm not even going to attempt to type anything sensible. And here it is. And it's, as you can see at the top here, I've got this statement here that all changes are saved in Drive. If you watch as I type away there, that says saving, 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 all changes saved in Drive. So it's very, very quick to save and update. I've been using Docs for I think about 12 years. I first discovered it as a way that I could help students keep reflective logs of their work. And I was just blown away by the idea that I could see their work. They didn't have to hand in a piece of paper and wait for me to write on it. I could check in, I could work on it at the same time. So I've got an example ready here, and Darren's going to help me out. This is some work that I've set today for my Year 9s. We're working on gender equality. So I've actually posted this on Classroom, but you could just share the document with them directly. I'll do that. I'll show you how to do that in a second. So Darren is now working on this, and as you can see at the bottom here, I can watch Darren typing in his work, and I could either hop on and type at the same time. So I say, oh, I'll come to the end. I could literally be feeding in my commentary as we go along. We can both be working in exactly the same moment into the document. I've done this with, I think the largest group I've ever actually done this with is about 90 students. I did give them a table and a line to write in each, and it worked absolutely perfectly. It's really impressive, the collaboration. It's really, really smooth. So I shared this with Darren by sending him the link. So let's go through that process. Thank you very much, Darren. So when I've created my document, I can click this blue share button at the top. It's reasonably intuitive. And I can share it. I can pop in there an email address of someone I want to share it with. So that's my personal Gmail. That's fine. I can give them a notification. But I'm choosing when I send it what it is I want that person to be able to do. So if I don't want them to be able to edit, if I just want them to see it, I might give them view basis, or I might give them a comment basis, or I might allow them to edit that document if I actually want to support their work as it's progressing. So either I can create the template and send it, or the student can create their work and share their template with me, giving me the editing right or the commenting right to give them feedback as we go. This is giving me a little warning that's saying I'm sharing this outside my domain. Your school may have that switched off, so you may not be able to share it outside your domain, but on the whole, you'd probably normally be sharing inside domain anyway. So that shouldn't be too much of an issue. So that's a really quick example of how I can see Darren's work in real time. I could also use a comment bank. So I could also, if I zoom in at the top here, I've got this plus button here to add a comment, but it also appears here at the side where I can start typing in a comment. And what I can do, if I use the plus, I can actually sort of notify Darren that I'm giving him this comment. And if I tick this button here, it actually assigns it to him as a task. And he gets an email and a task notification that there's something there for him to do. So it's another way of managing that communication and that collaboration workflow. So this is a very quick example of how you could use this for students. And what I really like about it is you don't have to wait for them to hand it in. You can check in if they're going well. You can give them some encouragement on their way. If it's not going so well, you can kind of correct it before they've spent a lot of time going astray. So that's really, really helpful. There's loads of great stuff here that I could talk to you about all day. Loads and loads of features, but we won't go too far into that because I want to show you one more thing. Another quick way to get to Docs, if you just want to set up a document, if you go docs.new, as I've put there in my toolbar, that's a shortcut in any of the Google tools to generate a new document for you. This brings me straight into a new document. I don't have to go to Google Docs and load it or anything else. I'm just going to show you, it's a very, very similar process, but let's imagine I wanted to make a meeting agenda. Really, really need to learn to type. Now, another Google tool you have here is Keep, which integrates beautifully. I just had this stuff here ready to drop in. I'm going to just pop those into my meeting agenda. There we go. And I'm going to share that off to my department group and say, any other items for the agenda. Please add agenda items before Monday's meeting. Okay, and I'm choosing ahead of time that I'm going to let my colleagues edit that document so they can actually add the content to it. And that then I could share that to a group of people without limitation. And hopefully then by the time the meeting comes, we've got an up-to-date agenda with everybody's questions and concerns in place. Okay, going back to the Docs homepage for a second, docs.google.com. And again, these are web-based tools, so you could add shortcuts to them. Every single one of these is a web-based tool. So you could have a permanent shortcut to that item living on your toolbar. If you felt it was something you wanted to go to regularly, you can stick it on there. And that means I can shortcut to that document whenever I need it and keep it as a live tool. There's currently a debate between grid view and list view as to what people prefer. I think I like list view better, but you can have it arranged in a grid, and the grid will give you a bit more of a sort of thumbnail of the activity in the document. So here I can see already, without opening it, that Darren's added some content at the bottom there. So that could be helpful depending on how it is you're using your docs. Okay, doing well. 2 more things to show you, and then I will be handing over to Darren. He's going to show you how to do this in Classroom. So finding a document in all the cloud-based tools, in all the Google Drive, Google Docs, etc. I personally have given up the idea of having a filing structure. When I'm working in File Explorer or on a non-cloud-based tool, my files are how I find things, but it's quite time-consuming. So I will always use the search bar up at the top of Google Drive or Google Docs. And the search feature is really strong. It will search inside the document. So if we remember that in my meeting agenda, I had the word budget request. So I know, let's say that a week later, I'm like, I know I put in the budget request, but I can't remember which document that was in, or I can't remember what I called that document. I can't find it. If I type the word budget request here, Google Docs will search inside, it will, I promise, my document, and find all documents with that famous buzzwords, all documents with that combination of terms in it. So search, don't sort is definitely my preference, and maybe because I've just created it. And the search feature is the way to go. That's what is my meeting agenda. Right. There we go. Thank you. That's my 10-minute timer. So that's my very quick introduction to Docs for you. I'm very happy to take questions in the chat. But I think seeing it how you can add it to Classroom and really amplify its power is definitely the next step. So I'm going to hand over to Darren. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you very much, Laura. Just a really great kind of demo of how Docs works as a standalone product. But we're going to now look at it, as Laura mentioned, in actual Classroom. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add a template that I've already created in Docs already through the sort of methods that Laura was showing you. And we're going to go to create, and I'm going to create a new assignment in here. And let's just call this write-in practice, whatever that might be. And I could put my instructions in here. Maybe it's a particular question that I'd want the students to complete for the students. There we go. Obviously, it wouldn't just say question for students. Then I'd go to add down here, and I can then link into my Google Drive. Now, this is going to open, first of all, my most recent documents. So it's really helpful that I've just been sort of working on some of these things. So I'm going to add a writing framework. And this just helps some of my students who would struggle with just giving a blank page to a student. So I can say, actually, I want to post this to my class, but I want to add this writing framework so the students can then maybe have their own version of this. So I'm going to make a copy for each of the students, and they can use this writing framework if it helps them, or they don't necessarily need to and can add their own document if they want to on this assignment. So let's just set a date to have this in. Let's go for Thursday, and I'm just going to assign that to my group. So that's going to assign in there, and it's now going to create a copy for each student. So in this classroom, I've got a little demo class here with just 2 demo students in here, sort of 2 fake students. And I've now set that work. And if I click on this writing practice here, I can then see I've assigned this to 2 students, and I can then see this writing frame. So if I click on here, it's just going to open up this framework, which is just a really basic kind of boxes, introduction to question, and then point 1, point 2, and then they put conclusion at the end. So it's a really sort of easy sort of structure that I could then use with my students every single time when I set them a question, and then that would be assigned to them. Now, I've actually set a practice question for them to be working on, and I noticed this is due today. So I've already seen one student's handed this in, and another it's been assigned to. So let's have a look at the marking element of how I could actually mark this work. So I can see here, I've got my student number 1 here, nice original names for my test students, and I can see they've turned that in. So let's go into the marking element onto here. So this is now going to open this up into a page where I can add the comments directly into this kind of marking window. I can also, if I did want to open up this work directly and have a look at it in my full screen rather than just this marking window, I can move over to this kind of arrow, and it allows me to open that up into a new window so that I could then comment on that student's work for them. So the same thing applies down here. So I can see that the student's kind of gone here. They've kind of written a story around here around good teaching, for instance, on this one. And I can then highlight any of this text, maybe this one here, and I could then sort of say, add a comment for that student directly on that text and say, add reference, okay? And I can type that in there, and that would then comment and add that onto their particular work. I can also then have a comments bank. So, you know, when you're going through marking particular work and you're saying, oh, I'm using the same comment every single time, I wish I could just save that and have it in a comments bank. You can do, you can actually have a comments bank. So this first screen that appears here is kind of the marking overall screen. So I can give it a grade at this point, and I can also add a private comment as well that would go directly to that student, have communication with that student. But if I click on my next tab here, I've got this comment bank. I've already created some bank of reference here. So I've got an in-text reference, and actually that might be better rather than just add reference. Maybe that's a bit kind of vague. So I'm just going to close and delete that particular comment for that student. And I'm going to use my actual comment bank one on here because they might not know how to do an in-text reference. I'm then going to click on add my comment. And this time I'm going to press the hash key. So I'm going to put hash in. As soon as I put the hashtag in, that's going to allow me to select the particular stuff that I've got in my comment bank. So I can start typing if I wanted to. Say if I had a big list, obviously I've only got 2 on here, so I could select it. But if I just start typing in, that's going to bring up my in-text reference, and that's going to paste that straight away for me. So it's going to save me a lot of time marking and just bring up those comments that I regularly use. I can easily add a comment onto that comment bank as well. So let's just say I want to say here, let's say great example, and say I don't want to type that out every time. I could then hit the comment, and then on the little options, so whenever you see in Google 3 dots, that just gives you some more options. You've then got an option down here to say add to comment bank. So I can then click on here and go great example. That'll be added to my comment bank, and you'll see that now appear on the right hand side. I can also delete any of these. So if I didn't want to have any of those, or I wanted to change them, I could delete them from those. Also as well, if I've got a big list of comments that I just want to sit and just have saved in my comment bank, maybe the first time that you're using this, I can just go into my comment bank and go add to bank, and then I can start typing a new line. So I've now got to think of some feedback. Excellent work. It's not great feedback. If I do a new line, it's then going to give me all these comments as separate comments. So let's say great reference. There we go. Very generic feedback there for the students. I'm going to click add now, and you'll notice it's added both of those as 2 separate comments. So again, when I'm using my comments on along here and clicking add, I can press the hashtag key, and now I will then see all those particular comments. I can select the one that I want to use and comment onto that student's work. Okay, so that's one student. And from this view, once I've kind of happy and I've graded this, let's say they get sort of 65 out of here, I can return this work straight away from the student within this in this window as well. So I can return it, or I can return multiple submissions. So I haven't got to go back into Classroom to do that. I can do that all in my grading window. But also, as Laura mentioned, you can see when students have been working on work straight away, kind of if it's in sort of a draft format, and I want to give feedback to them. So if I go to my next student, my student 2, now they haven't actually handed this work in, but I can still see it within my marking window, see kind of what they've put in to begin with, and maybe I can then scroll down here and I can then sort of say, maybe add some additional support for them. So I could add a comment in here to support that student and saying really great introduction, or whatever that might be. Now you'll also notice at the top here, I'm now currently in suggesting mode. So that means I can add some information onto their document directly, and it will then add it as a comment. So the student can accept that comment, or they can delete that and then add some more information. So for instance, if I start typing on here and saying, can you now highlight 2 features of a good teacher? if I can spell right, there we go, quick typing. You'll notice now it's saying that I've added this as a particular comment, and I can just go accept that suggestion, or I can delete that, reject that suggestion if I'm the student. So it's a great way just to kind of add some suggestions in there. I've not got to save that at all, that's already there, and the student can then respond to it as well. So you'll notice there's a reply comment on there, so a student could have a sort of dialogue around that suggestion that I'm adding in there. And that's the automatic default when you come into this marking window, is to use that suggestion box. Okay, the one other thing that I want to show you, which is a bit difficult to show on my screen because it's not available within a web browser. It's actually available on the app. So if you've got an Android app or you've got the iOS app for Classroom, you can annotate on someone's work. Let's just go back to my Classroom 1. And I've done this already just on my phone. So do apologies about me trying to scribble on my phone and write some text, but it's created a PDF. So it creates a separate PDF if I've used a Google Doc, and I can then write onto this Google Doc very, very basically reference that says, and I can also highlight particular text as well using that app, and I can also go to put some text comments on there as well and kind of move those wherever I want them to be on that annotated work. So I can annotate anyone's work and put information on there that the students can then get to. So it's a really nice feature that is available if you've got the app. So if you've got the Classroom app, like on your Chromebook or on your phone or tablet, you can then write directly on it. It will then save it as a separate PDF. And when I return that to the students, they'll get their original marked copy that they had, so their original version that they handed in, and a PDF version as well. So it's a great way to kind of add that information on there. Brilliant. So that's all the sort of ways that we can then use docs within Google Classroom. I'm sure there's kind of lots of questions around those. So we'll head back to Kiri, and I'm sure Laura will join us as well if there's any sort of questions around using docs in Classroom.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Darren. I love the fact that your writing looks exactly like my writing, which is why, no offense, but that looks like my normal handwriting, not my writing on a phone. So
my typing though.
Yeah, really good job. Thanks so much for that, both. It was really really helpful to see actually in practice, right? And I think particularly if you're getting started and you're brand new, it's really helpful just to see what the flow might look like if you're using Google Docs. But you know, like I think just from, obviously we're really focused on feedback today, and we just wanted to show you kind of Google Docs as kind of what it is and what it can do. But if you think about it from a teaching and learning perspective, it has so many functions, and because you can collaborate and because you can work together on something, it adds like another layer of things you can do with it, and you can be really creative. And just as a kind of note, my favorite thing in Google Docs is absolutely the explore function. I don't know if anyone else uses that, but in the bottom right hand corner there's a little square, and if you hover over it, your mouse over it, it'll pop out and say explore, and it will bring up an Google Docs search basically of the web, so you can insert pictures and all the pictures are labeled for reuse, which is awesome. And also you can find other things in your drive that are related to what's going on in the document, and you can also reference from there as well. So if you've taken something from a particular website, you can click the citation speech marks and it'll pop you in a footnote. So probably not like the most perfect referencing tool if you're a university student, okay, like, and you will have to probably go back and actually do your references more properly, I guess is the way to put it, but it does a pretty good job actually. And I think actually having a brother in university right now, he's started to learn how to use that by doing it that way. So yeah, really great tool, really good for school students if you're trying to teach them about plagiarism. Anyway, I digress. So we have a few questions come in. One was specifically that I can answer was about credits, or about these webinars or stuff that you might do online towards CPD. Unless you go towards the level 1 and level 2 educator certifications, there aren't credits for taking part in today's webinar or for doing the stuff online. But usually when you go through any online training, it does track your progress. So you might want to go in and kind of screenshot the end result of you finishing that particular module. So that might be a way to log it. And then obviously kind of the training really builds you up and gears you up towards doing the level 1 and level 2 certifications. And that's when you would then get your badge and kind of your accreditation. So it's definitely something that if you're kind of serious about taking that Google Educator step forward, that would be the way to do that. But in terms of attending the webinars, these are really more informative and giving ideas and inspiration on how to use the tool. So these, we're not able to give credit for them, but you might be able to kind of copy in the links that you watched, etc., as part of that. So obviously this is all dependent on how your school logs CPD. So I can't really be much more kind of explicit about that. Yes, Laura, go for it.
There's a really good question from Kerry in the chat, and it might be one Darren wants to pick up on, I'm not sure, but it's about when you comment without returning the document. So she's saying, if you've given comments, why would you then return it separately? And it's probably easier to explain face-to-face than type it out. So when the students hand their work in, you become the sort of temporarily the owner. I think of this as like a physical, like a pigeonhole. They put the work in and they walk away and you have the work. So once they press hand in, it's with you. They don't have editing again until you return it to them. So that's the difference between commenting and returning. I don't know, Darren, if you want to elaborate on that a bit.
Yeah, exactly that. So it's kind of, they would definitely hand it in, and they can't then edit that hand in unless they unsubmit it, and then they get kind of editing rights back to that document. So once I hand it in, it's then the teacher's document. Document would then be marked by the teacher, and then you would then return it, and that would effectively be grading it. So as in the case of, if you put whatever score you've got, you put that back in, you return that to the students, it would then notify them that they've been returned to them, and they can then have a look at the comments that they've received for that particular work and the mark. I'm sure they'll jump straight to the mark, but maybe they'll read all the comments first.
And I think
formative and summative, isn't it? So as people are working, you can give those comments that Darren was showing, which can be formative before it's handed in, and then you can give a private comment, which could be summative when you press return. It just depends how you use it. Every context is going to be different.
Yeah, and I think just in terms of a workflow, I know that when I was teaching using Classroom, I just got into a really good habit of the workflow and teach my students when they first came to my class and use Classroom that, you have to submit work, and if you don't submit the work, then I'm not going to mark it, although I did, because obviously I wanted to give them feedback, but, and just to reiterate with students, this is the proper workflow, and I'll return it once I'm ready, and that's when your final marks will be released. So I definitely would say that after giving feedback, returning it is a useful workflow, and probably more for you, right? And for me, definitely as a teacher, I could go through and see what I'd marked and what I'd returned, and I would know just from a to-do list that I could go in and just give that work back, and I wouldn't need to do anything else to it or wait for that student to submit it again to mark it the second time round, for example. So yeah, definitely something to think about, but obviously it depends what works for you and your students, and you might not have particularly well-trained students in that sense, and particularly in the current climate where you might not be in a position to be able to kind of instill that into them. So yeah, just something to think about, whatever is appropriate for you. Okay, there's a couple of another question: can they edit after you return it? Yes, you can edit. So students will be able, and you'll still be able to give comments, but the students will basically be able to edit the work. And in theory, you can have a continuous resubmission, send back, resubmission, send back, depending on what your setup is. I know that particularly for Darren in FE, and when I used to teach in FE, that isn't what you wanted, so you probably wouldn't return it after the second submission. And you could also see if they'd unsubmitted it, etc. But for a school setting, there's no reason that couldn't go on and on and on if you really wanted it to, which I'm sure you probably don't. Okay, any other questions? I'm just thinking. Let's have a look. Okay, I find that quite often my pupils inadvertently delete a document that I have given each student a copy of. Is there a way to easily restore this for them? Who wants to take that one?
My students do this, and I find it a bit annoying, to be honest. I imagine it's there in their deleted items in their Google Drive, so they'd have to go into their Google Drive and click on the trash file. So when you trash something in Google, it goes into the trash folder for 30 days, I believe. So they
the trash folder indefinitely, actually, yeah.
Indefinitely now, cool. Yeah, so it's there in their deleted items. They can restore it from there, unless you're feeling kind, in which case you could just issue it again.
Actually, depending on what your admin console has set up, like your admin is set up, because that could be, they could have it to empty out, but you have unlimited storage, right? So just tell them they don't need to delete anything.
They still do sometimes. I don't know how they do it.
I know. Another question was, can the comments be color-coded? Unfortunately, not right now, but there might be ways around that if that's an absolute must, that you could, rather than using comments, maybe you could kind of add color blocked text in the document itself. And again, like we're just sort of showing you what features are there, and this is really about your context and understanding how your students work best and how you work best. So yeah, just really just think about kind of what's most appropriate for you, and just take this as this is what's available, and use what you need to. Okay, I think with that, because we have we have 3 people waiting in the wings to talk to us, and so I really want to make sure that we have enough time for more Q&A at the end. So with that, I'm gonna say bye to Darren and Lauren to say thank you, and I'm gonna bring in Kim and Scott from Bridgend College. Hello, a newly qualified reference school. That's not qualified is the wrong word, but you know what I mean. Awarded, newly awarded Google Reference School. Welcome to the Reference School family, and thank you for coming on today. We're really excited to hear about your kind of story at Bridgend College and how you're continuing learning right now. So with that, I'm going to leave you both to introduce yourselves and then continue from there. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Kiri, for the introduction. So I'm Scott. I'm digital lead at Bridgend College, and I kind of oversee our use of technology across teaching and learning, so across all the curriculum. I'll let Kim introduce herself.
I'm Kim Lawther. I am the Assistive Technology Lead at Bridgend College, so work with students with additional learning needs.
Cool. So just over the next 2 slides, be given a kind of brief overview of our college digital strategy, how we sort of got to where we are, if you like, and mention in the Reference College a certification that we've recently achieved as well. And then also just sort of discussing a couple of points about our approach to remote learning in the current circumstances. So just a bit of background. Bridgend College is a further education college, FE college in South Wales. We employ around 700 staff and support about 6,000 learners on full, part-time and work-based learning courses. We have 4 campuses, Bridgend, Pencoed, Queens Road and Maesteg. We were crowned FE College of the Year, last year's TESS FE Awards, and the most recent achievement is to have been recognised as a Google Reference College, and we're really proud of that one. We've been using G Suite across the organisation since about 2018. We sort of phased it in. And when we were first introducing it, we were really looking for something to kickstart a seed change really in teaching and learning for us. And not only has G Suite achieved that really quickly, it's led to massive developments in agile working practices for all staff across the whole organisation. And that's business support right the way through to curriculum. We've got over 150 certified Google Educator Level 1s now. There's around 30 at Level 2. We've got 4 in-house certified trainers and 1 innovator. And all of these training programs are funded for any staff member who wants to kind of go through training and work towards the next level. Our VLE is entirely Google Classroom, and that's used across all curriculum areas. I'm just going to kind of briefly outline our digital strategy, which is based on the Welsh Government's Digital 2030 framework. And this document sets out kind of expectations and goals, if you like, for the post-16 education sector to kind of strive to achieve by 2030. I'm not going to go into any sort of finer details about this. The document is available online, download from Welsh Government, and we're more than happy to sort of share our digital strategy with anybody who's interested. Instead of that, I'm just going to talk about kind of 4 key factors, I suppose, which we kind of consider to be critical to any sort of digital transformation success. The first I want to discuss is people first. And this is a kind of key component of our organizational strategy across the college. And it extends everywhere from staff all the way through to students. And I personally believe that without this approach, there's no point investing in technology. And the whole ethos of this includes investment in training and time for all staff before you invest in the product or in the technology. To kickstart a sort of digital transformation, we engaged a Google professional development partner, Aspire to Be, and they sort of developed a bespoke 2-year training plan with us. And I personally feel that we've only been really successful this far because of the sustained investment by the organisation in the time, the training and the infrastructure to ensure that these the people, the process, the product align kind of seamlessly across the college. And Aspire to Be really embody these concepts as well. And they've been great helping us through the last couple of years. But even with all that in mind, kind of, put the people first and everything, I don't think digital transformation is really possible without commitment to core IT infrastructure. And we've invested annually in Wi-Fi connectivity, devices, cloud storage provision, and we have an on-site IT technical support team, a great IT technical support team, which has been really critical in kind of moving through the stages of our transformation over the last couple of years. The last thing I think, which is kind of hinges around our people first approach, is that it extends across leadership. And we work consistently with senior leaders across the college to ensure that the digital strategy is coherent, implemented, and respected. And I think that's a really key point on the last one. It needs to be a kind of working document. Any digital strategy is not a document that's designed to sort of sit in a drive and gather dust, virtual dust in the background. It's supposed to be continually updated. So that's kind of just an overview of where we are. I just kind of want to go through a couple of examples now of practices, I suppose, we've kind of taken up over the last couple of weeks in the current situation, and our sort of approach to switching to remote learning, to remote working. Before I start, I just want to kind of say that without G Suite and the tools that we have access to, we wouldn't have been able to achieve this switch as quickly as we have. And we're certainly very grateful to the whole Google team. So just to kind of kick off and kind of building on what Darren was saying earlier about Classroom, I sort of just highlight one of the ways that we've been using it to engage learners, which I think is great. Our resident Google trainer and innovator, Pete Dunford, has created a classroom for our HE exams, and simultaneous assessments within this classroom run, and each paper is only assigned to relevant people for the right amount of time for them. So if there's people who need extra time, each paper is assigned to them, taking that into account, and each document is sort of made a copy for all within Classroom. It's run across 11 tutors, 52 learners on 4 different courses. There's self-marking through Google Forms in there. There's the ability to import the grades into Classroom, like Darren was saying, and technical support is on hand through the new Google Classroom Meet functionality, which has just kind of been launched. We use the revision history as well quite extensively in Docs to just make sure that each student who's accessed each exam is the right person. And everything is obviously recorded inside Docs. But I really think that's a great example, and credit to Pete for sort of highlighting everything that's great about Classroom in sort of one example there. On Docs, and since this is kind of a webinar mainly about Docs, I thought I'd just share an add-on which we've kind of recently discovered and I actually really love, and that's Mote. So Mote is basically a tool for leaving voice feedback, and it is really proper simple, just like you can see in this little GIF I made. And if you haven't tried it out yet, definitely go and check it out and give it a go. I think it's awesome. Kind of on a more wider scale, Docs is used extensively throughout the organization across the college for both teaching and learning and business support. And I checked in the admin console right before I did this, and since the 1st of March, we've had over 50,000 new Google Docs created inside our domain, which I think is pretty immense. They're used for all internal policies, and collaborative features are used throughout the college for all meetings, from senior leadership all the way through to staff team meetings. It sort of probably goes without saying that our Google Meet usage has gone through the roof since switching to remote working and learning over the past couple of weeks. And this graph shows the cumulative total number of unique Google Meet calls created since the 1st of Jan this year, and that's an increase of over 5,000%. We've been really impressed as well by the rapid rollout of new features from Google, and we've received excellent feedback, great feedback from lecturers about how easy it is to use and interact with learners. Again, it's used across the organization. All of my meetings are done through Meet now, and lecturers are using chat rooms in the Google Chat and interfacing with learners through Google Meet. It is really, really, really good, and it's been really great for us. The last thing, just before I sort of sum up and hand over to Kim, I just want to discuss our approach to devices over the last couple of months, especially in this kind of crisis. We sort of worked really hard with curriculum teams, with staff members, with students to figure out who needed what and prioritize sort of a loaning system based on needs at home. And since then, we've provided over 200 Chromebooks, loaned them to students and staff. And we are sort of continuing to ensure that our learners have the technology they need at home to access the material. If they don't have Wi-Fi, we'll make sure they get a Wi-Fi dongle. If they don't have a device, we'll make sure we can sort of sort them out with one. And I think this stage is really critical in what we tried to kind of get to, because we just need to make sure that everybody can access this online material. And if they can't, then why not? And can we fix that? And that's what we tried to really kind of get to before we locked down. And this has all made a really strong case for one-to-one devices, which we'll kind of look at for September, and that's something kind of on my list to look at. I'm going to stop talking now. I'm going to hand over to Kim, who's going to talk to you a little bit about how we've been engaging and supporting learners with additional needs. Over to you, Kim.
Thank you. I'm just going to look at 5 apps. I'm going to need Scott to change the slide. Sorry, dude. 5 particular parts of G Suite that we've been using in the additional learning need team. So first of all, looking at sites, we've created 2 sites, one for current students that would normally come to us for support, whether that was for dyslexia support, autism support, or assistive technology support. So we've created a site specifically for them so that they can go onto that, and there are lots of resources, but also contact details if they've forgotten our emails, which they shouldn't, but things like that. The other site that we've created is for students that are due to come and see us, start with us rather, in September. We have 3 transition leads at the college who normally would go into schools and meet parents and students and things like that. So we've created another site for them so that they can gather all that information that they would normally get from us firsthand. The second one is chats. Again, like I said, students come to us daily for one-on-one support. So we've been able to transfer that online and do it via chats, which has been really, really successful for us. The third is Classroom. So we have a lot of students who have learning support assistants, and our learning support assistants have been using Google Classroom in order to support learners remotely. So that includes things like scribing during lessons and sessions remotely, and then sending those notes via email to the students that they support. Fourth is been calendars. So we have actively been encouraging our additional learning needs learners to use Google Calendar and all the features, because obviously things like routine is very important, particularly for our students who have autism. So we've been really utilising that and making sure that they use calendars, and where possible they have it on their phones as well, just to, because your teenagers tend to always have their phones with them, so it's that extra reminder to hand something in or attend a hangout or things like that. And finally, forms. So like I said, we normally would be doing a lot of work on transition at this time of year. So in order to get all the information that we need to support the new students come September, we've created 1-page profiles in which them and their parents and their teachers can input all the information that we need to know in order to be able to support them appropriately come September, so we can hit the ground running. So that's just 5 of what we've used, but really, truthfully, we've used so much of G Suites, and we've been, like Scott said earlier, I've been really, really impressed with just how easy it is, because particularly with our LSAs, we have a wide age range of staff that work with us. So not all of them are tech savvy, but thankfully G Suite and everything on there is super simple to use. And that's the feedback we've had. So it's been quite a nice and easy transition into online learning and support.
Awesome.
So, yeah.
Thank you both. Yeah, there's a bit of a delay there. That was fantastic and beautiful slides, by the way. They look really, really snazzy. Yeah, just wanted to say thank you for sharing your story. And just, I know that we didn't point this out in Google Docs earlier, but just kind of along the same vein as sort of around accessibility and, you know, being supportive and inclusive, there are accessibility tools built into G Suite, specifically around Google Docs, things like speech to text. You can also translate whole documents from one language into another. So definitely something to think about with ESOL learners, for example, or parents who have English as a second language. So really think about that, and you know, have a search through is always what I say. Like, you're not going to break anything, just go through the settings and see what's there and what's available. But great story. Thank you so much, guys, for coming to share your story. I'm going to bring you back in about 9 to 10 minutes for Q&A at the end. But before that, we're going to bring in Ed, who's coming up next, and is going to be sharing his story and his school story around using G Suite. Over to you, Ed.
Hi, thanks very much for the introduction, Kerry. So my name's Ed Turner. I'm Head of Science at Thurstable School in Tiptree in Essex. Just to give a bit of background what we are really. So we are a non-selective 11 to 18 school with 1,160 students on our roll. We've got a really wide catchment of students as well, reaching beyond our semi-rural village. So we pride ourselves quite a lot on our really strong community focus. So what I was going to do is give you a brief introduction, kind of like the previous school, into our strategy in terms of what we do in terms of our digital content and how we provide for students. So we integrated Google for Education back in 2013, and we became the first Google reference school in Essex in 2016, which we pride ourselves on quite a lot. As a result of all of that, we've been a resource to lots of our local primary schools as well, and lots of our other local schools, providing them with advice on startup and support on best practice. So we've currently got over 1,800 active G Suite for Education users across the school. And since then, the school has been developing a really rich kind of e-learning opportunities for students through our dedicated facility that we've got called the e-learning centre. And students can come and access one of more of our 500 Chromebooks that we've got on site, and they can design models to 3D print in there and use our green screen studio and all of that kind of stuff as well. So it's a really cool facility that we've got. So e-learning's kind of been given a really strong focus over the last 7 years. And as a result of that, we've also introduced 4 local primary schools to G Suite. And they're now under the Google Cradle to College initiative, teaching primary school students from our community how to use G Suite and prepare them for digital learning when they hopefully join us for secondary school. So they've already got their Google accounts, they already kind of know how to use basic tools. So their transition between coming up to us into year 7 shouldn't be too big a step in terms of a digital step anyway. We're also the only school in the UK to participate in the US pilot program for Google certification for 16 to 18-year-olds for students in college as well, which is, again, we're pretty proud of. So teaching staff are pretty familiar with G Suite, as you can probably understand. And since schools having to close due to COVID, we've moved almost seamlessly into a virtual school. So Virtual Thurstable was introduced to students on the 30th of March this year. And we've had 1,250 regular daily users, held over 3,500 Google Meet live sessions and lessons, and had 500,000 shares in Drive, and about over 200 active Google Classrooms running for our students to access their work from. So more importantly, thanks to G Suite, we've actually managed to provide structure and ongoing education to our students in our community, allowing us to focus on our core purpose, which ultimately is education. So I've got here some examples of what we're doing in terms of remote learning. And obviously this is a Google Docs webinar. So I want to try to just focus on the Google Docs element primarily, but there are lots of things that have already been mentioned by the other presenters in terms of how Google Docs is just one part of a big puzzle and how it kind of links to all of the other Google services. So I'll mention some of those as we go as well. So since our shift to online learning, our teaching infrastructure now relies quite heavily on G Suite, almost exclusively. And although we use a complement of all the products together to deliver our online learning, I want to focus just on these Google Docs elements and some hacks, as we'd like to call them, that we found to provide some timely and effective feedback for students whilst trying to reduce staff workload at the same time, which is obviously a big problem at the moment. You know, this is a big change for everybody, and trying to make sure it's as easy and as simple as possible for everyone is kind of a key focus too. So each week, 50% of our lessons are live through Google Meet, and staff can present lessons, they can do assessments or whatever else they want to do while they're live online. Some of us teach exclusively, so we present our screens and kind of go through lessons as we would if we were in a physical classroom, or we can carry out digital assessments or things like that and that kind of thing. The rest of our work is like many people, is kind of set through Google Classroom, as you saw earlier. We wanted to make sure that we had a really strong focus on e-teaching and learning, and we're keen to ensure that a lot of the good practice and the current theory that we embed in our normal lessons in classroom-based lessons was easily transferred to our virtual classrooms. So to do that, our science team developed a 3-lesson cycle structure based on knowledge acquisition, application, and recall. And through that, we use multiple Google products to help us with that. And the recall element's actually done through Google Forms, which you can set up as a quiz on Google Classroom. So I do suggest you check that out as well. That's a really good feature. So additionally, we wanted to embed some pedagogical strategies into our online teaching. To ensure this was really consistent, what we decided to do was create Google Doc templates for the team and place them in the template gallery. So each template contained the basic structure for that part of the 3-lesson cycle. And this allowed the staff to easily generate copies of the document as a basis for producing their online lessons, whilst also ensuring that we're all using the same strategies that we would in the physical classroom. This also provided students with some clear structure and routine, which they've told us has been really useful in understanding how they're progressing through their online work. And there was flexibility built into each of the templates as well. So they weren't kind of exclusive. You didn't have to do exactly what was on there, but we ensured that the students had clear places to respond to the questions that we were asking in those templates, so that it was really clear where they'd done their work, and then it was also clear where we could do our feedback. The use of the templates also really sped up the production of our online resources as well for the students. So in just 2 weeks, when we kind of got the call to know that we were moving to a virtual school, we managed to generate between us 230 online lessons and resources for the students using across a range of teaching topics as well. One of the other things that we did to kind of complement that, kind of talking about another product really briefly, is one of the really cool features in Google Meet is that you can obviously record the meeting, but it also allows you to record what you're presenting. So some of the staff were also kind of like talking over their PowerPoints or their lessons and giving instruction that way, and recording those elements too, and then using those videos as resources linked to a template or put into Google Classroom to help students learn. So in class, we would easily be able to deliver answers to a group really simultaneously, giving feedback. So however, achieving this online wasn't so easy, and the simple repetitive tasks online can become quite time consuming. So to ensure our time was spent on giving really effective feedback, we created our own hack kind of thing in Google Docs to quickly mark student work. So in activities where one word or a short answer response was required, the questions were arranged into tables, and I've got some examples to show you in a minute. We're arranged into tables in the doc, with the second column filled in to indicate where students needed to answer their question. We just colour the boxes in, we fill them in with a kind of like a pale yellow colour so they know where to write. And then we put in a third column, and we filled all the answers in, but we turned the text to white and made the column really narrow. And so the students kind of thought that that's where we were just going to go and put the answers in for them later on, but they didn't realise the answers were already in there. So this was left on the shared templates, and then we copied those templates to each student using Google Classroom. So students kind of assume that there's nothing there, but then it means that we can come in and do either live marking, so during a Google Meet perhaps, or when we're going back and reviewing work like we've already seen earlier today. All we have to use really quickly is select the column, change the text color back to black, and there's all the answers, nice and easy. And it saved the staff like a load of time, ensured that feedback was given really, really quickly to the students. And that, like I say, it can be done during the live lesson as well. So you can jump into a doc that's been worked on as a draft by a student, and before they see it, you can just quickly highlight, change the color, and they're the answers for them. They can go and assess themselves. As mentioned earlier, that many of our lessons in the week are live, so feedback can be given verbally when students are working, but some of the work is completed and handed in outside of the lessons. So to ensure that the feedback wasn't wasted and to ensure that the students actually engaged in the work, we use the assigning feature of the comments part of Google Docs, which is really good. And so we assign those to students. They'll get an email alert saying that there's a comment on your piece of work, you need to go and do something with it. So they could go in and respond to those comments and then tick them all off at the end. So we just found that was a really good way of making sure that students were using their time effectively, that they were directed to the work that the staff had put in as well, that we wanted to make sure that that wasn't wasted either. And finally, to ensure that learning and teaching dominated the majority of our time again, we used our Docs template in assignments on Google Classroom. So what we decided to do was set up a Google Classroom just for the staff. And in there, all of the staff put all their assignments together into the topic folders. So in Google Classrooms, if you've explored it a little bit, you can order assignments by topic. So we effectively put all our assignments in there, put them into topic labels, and then we could actually reuse posts or reuse assignments in all of the kids' Google Classrooms. So it meant that collaboratively in our team of 10 members of staff, we actually shared all of these lessons between us, again, massively reducing workload. So here I've got a couple of examples a little bit closer up for you to see. Hopefully you can see on the screen now, here's an example of one of our templates with the embedded hidden answer section. So you can see that there's that right-hand column where the answers are revealed. So we just literally select it. It's that quick, change the font color, and suddenly all the answers are in there. They're marked, and you can go back and you can comment to the student, tell them to go and self-assess them, or compare their answers, or whatever you want to do with that. We found that was quite a cool little doc hack, which is really nice. There's another example. I know we've kind of seen this already earlier, but of assigning comments. Again, it's really, really easy. So you can just pop it in. You can use your comment bank, which we've suggested that staff use a lot. Again, saving loads of time for repetitive feedback on particular tasks. That's really useful as well. And then finally, just to kind of emphasize the example of the work done by the students. So this is a real piece of work that we've had over this week, in fact. And you can see that we've got some private comments in there. We've got some allocated and assigned comments in there. And going back to a comment that we had, a question earlier in the live chat from, I think it was Wanda, said about making the kind of comments color coded. What we do instead is just highlight the text. So there's the highlight tool in Google Docs, which is nice and straightforward. It's just like using a highlighter pen. So you can just select a piece of text, change it and highlight it in a different color. So quite regularly I'll go in and put, green for stuff that's excellent, or amber for just have a look over this bit, and put a comment to go along with that, which we find is quite effective as well. And then finally, this bit is where you can see how we share all of our online lessons. So those are all the templates you can see there scrolling in front of you that were made as assignments in the centralized Google Classroom. And then we just jump into the students' individual classes and reuse the assignment. It makes a blank copy for those kids. And then you're away. You can set the assignment and off you go. And that's kind of us.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Ed. That was really great. Again, beautiful slides, everyone. I'm really, really impressed. I do love a good aesthetically pleasing slide deck. So thank you for sharing that. I love that top tip of doing the answer reveal. I've not seen that done before. I absolutely love that. How do the students find that?
Generally speaking, it's a kind of a top secret exercise amongst the staff. So we feel that they haven't really cottoned on yet. I think some of the more able ones have probably noticed and perhaps aren't telling us. But I think generally speaking, they haven't actually realised, and it works really quite well. I think they think we're just copying and pasting answers straight back in, but actually it saves a lot of time. So yeah, keeping that one amongst ourselves for the moment.
Well, if they don't watch this back then.
Yeah, let's hope not.
That's great. Thank you so much. I'm going to bring back in Scott, Kim and Darren. And I know that Laura's got to shoot off, so she probably will be able to join us for about 30 seconds. But just wanted to say thank you all for coming to talk today. We have quite a lot of questions coming up in the chat, which I think we did a really good job at going in and popping answers, written answers into. A couple of things, just one thing I wanted to call out about audio. There's not a way to do that necessarily straight into Google Forms. But I would always say, think about a Google form as sort of the assessment piece. You can then use other things, right, on Classroom. So you can set multiple things on Google Classroom, like attach the audio file in Google Classroom and then refer to it within the Google form. And you can even embed audio straight into Google Slides. So it might be a way to do that instead. And someone else said about making hyperlinks. Absolutely. You can make hyperlinks. So yeah, you can do hyperlinks to whatever you want to in Google Docs or Slides, or even in Sheets, right? So there's lots of different ways to kind of use Google Docs and use the tools that we talk about. For more information, please head over to the Trainer Centre. There's the Teacher Centre. Sorry, there's a ton of training on there that you can use and kind of go back at your own pace. And today is really just a snapshot of the things, and just to get you to gather some ideas about ways you might use it, and hear from schools and teachers that are using the tools already. So I think with that, I think we're totally out of time now. So I'm going to just wrap up and say thank you to all of you for joining today. It's been really great. So much information. I've learned stuff already, and so that's just really great. I love learning stuff and hope everyone else feels the same way. But if you can give us some feedback, there's just a link at the bottom there. It's really helpful for us moving forward to see kind of what sorts of things you might be interested in on these webinars and how we can make them better. With that, I'm going to say thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you all again tomorrow because we have some more webinars. Bye.